Welcome to Proactive Physio Podcast, Season 4. Laying the groundwork, buckle up because we are going back to basics, the powerful basics. This season is all about the foundation of functional movement patterns that underpin everything humans do. But we are not stopping at squats and lunges. We are zooming out for a global perspective on a movement, how gravity loads us, how the ground reacts, how chains communicate, and why compensation isn't a dirty word. It's a strategy demanding understanding part. The blending from different perspective in movement industry, we are cutting through confusion to deliver a movement clarity. You will learn how to see the whole story of human body, identify the real drivers of dysfunction, and build interventions that stick. Ready to move beyond reactive care and truly master the foundation of proactive physio. Tune in. Let's build unshakable movement. So we start from the first principle, the ideal to optimal strategy. The evolved synthesis above, we are recognize the best movement strategy depending on individual's unique anatomy, history, and current capacity of the specific demands of a task. That task is depending on the speed, load, direction, and the environment. What strategy is this person using to achieve their functional goal? Then we evaluate the strategy is efficient. Is it causing the excessive strain or a tissue overload? Is it sustainable? All these things we assess in our clinical practice. Many times, ideal as a reference, not mandate. There are people who understand a potential source of a strain within the observed strategy. The goal isn't necessary to achieve the textbook, which is called ideal, but to find the most efficient, least strain inducing strategy for that person doing that task. We assess the movement quality that is relative to the task and the individual, not just an abstract ideal. Modify the strategy only if it's demonstrably inefficient or causing a harm. So we understand the patient functional requirement and implement the specific movement pattern. We also check from the kinetic chain perspective and the compensation. This is the second part. Recognizing the compensation are the nervous system solution to the problem somewhere in the kinetic chain, and they are necessary adaptation. We should ask the specific pattern why this weakness, the stiffness, inability to demonstrate specific outcomes, whether the person has a past trauma, is this forcing this compensation or not? We find in our assessment. We address the source, not just the symptoms. Treat the underlying dysfunction. Like an example, ankle dorsiflexion. Due to limitation of ankle dorsiflexion, the person develops the excessive lumbar flexion, and that can lead to the foot pronation. This is the whole respective the kinetic chain dysfunction. Efficiency over elimination, which focus on whether the compensation is excessive on a strain inducing, or the goal is to reduce the need for inefficient compensation by improving the capacity of the dysfunction link, and integration of the whole kinetic chain that is not necessary to eradicate every deviation. During the clinical application, we map the kinetic myofascial chain which involved in the painful or inefficient movement pattern. We also identify the primary drivers which leads to the compensation, and this improve the capacity of impaired link and retrain the chain to function which less the strain inducing compensation. The third principle is integrating the triplanar and the load analysis. Life is a three-dimension. Core principle is that the functional movement occurs and integrated three planes simultaneously. All three planes integrates the critical roles of a gravity and a ground reaction force, which is essential fuel for the movement, and the movement cannot be understood without them. We must understand the dysfunction which often only becomes apparent or clinically relevant under the load, speed, or specific position stress. Like an example, a scapula may wing only when the lifting overhead and stepping forward. We need to assess the context. starts fundamental movement assessment like gait, squat, lunge, and reach immediately in all three dimensions. This incorporating the ground reaction force and gravity vectors like step up, shift, and rotation. This helps us to dynamically load the system in a functional patterns, and we can identify the dysfunction easily. From the clinical perspective, this assessment of the plane quickly, we use the closed chain weight bearing position, incorporating steps, reach, rotation, and light loads. These early to reveal a true functional capacity and the dysfunction. And then we design the exercise that reflect the triplanar and loaded reality. The fourth principle is context is the king. The functional relevance is paramount. We should ask, does this identified dysfunction actually contribute to the patient's pain or a functional limitation within the context of the daily life, sports, or any work? If we find the answer, then we implement the patient into the downgrade stage and assess the movement pattern. We test the hypothesis in the task also. Don't assume the Plink findings are automatically functionally relevant. Test the dysfunction during the performance of specific meaningful task. Example, does manually stabilize the scapula during their work-related overhead reach eliminates the pain? Does improving hip internal rotation immediately improves the golf swing mechanics or the stance phase? Patient goals drives a priority. Treatment focus is determined by what dysfunction most significantly impact the patient's ability to achieve their goal. Consider the context where the symptoms occurs. Like an example, only after 30 minutes of sitting, only during the specific work task, or only walking on uneven ground. The clinical implication from the above discussion, we rigorously link the dysfunction findings to the functional limitation. We use the clinical reasoning to prioritize treatment based on a functional impact. We continuously retest the dysfunction within the functional task to confirm the relevance and tailor intervention to the patient's specific context and the goal. Every time, quality matters. Motion is lotion, but quality matters. Movement is essential to affirms the vital role for the tissue, health, circulation, neurodynamics, and psychological well-being. Understand the inefficient or strain-inducing movement pattern which can limit the overall movement capacity, accelerate the fatigue, and lead to the repetitive strain or recurrent injury. Better movement allows for the better movement. There is a layered approach which helps us to find the safe entry point of a movement. Even if compensation are present, simultaneously we precisely identify and address the key control deficit or the mobility restriction within the functional pattern. The ultimate goal is to enable patients to engage in sufficient movement pattern with movement quality that minimize the tissue stress and maximize the efficiency. So during the clinical implication, don't let the pursuit of perfection paralyze movement. Start with movement the patient can do safely, gradually implement the whole mobility work within the kinetic chain. To improve the quality as the capacity allows, we prioritize the quality refinements that most impact pain or critical functional task. In essence, this evolved approach used within the wide-angle lens and it shifts the therapist thinking from fixing the faults to match an ideal to understanding the individual's movement strategy, optimize its efficiency and resilient within their unique context. And we use this precise intervention guided by the functional relevance. Thank you so much. If you like this podcast, don't forget to share and subscribe.